Oh yeah. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the Project Grow Show. I'm your host, Adrian Boysel, CEO of Adrian Graphics and Marketing. I'm excited to be back here for another episode with you. I was lucky enough to score an interview with one of my fellow Arete members from the Arete Syndicate. This guy is a go-getter. He's got some good things coming in his future, and he's working on some awesome stuff now, and he's got a lot of experience in the online world. So as you know, this is a mentorship, Project Grow mentorship, business mentorship show. And so I wanted to walk you guys through, introduce you to Bradley, and go ahead and make the introduction. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll right into it. What's up, Bradley?
All right, awesome. Just another Wednesday.
There we go.
Happy to be here, though.
Thanks for joining me. Awesome. So we're both members of Arete Syndicate. I'm curious, I want people to kind of get to know you as we kind of tell your story and get into a little bit of it. Who are you and how did you get into Arete Syndicate?
I guess we'll probably get into kind of my entrepreneurship story in a bit, but through the personal development space and entrepreneurship, I stumbled across Andy Frisella's podcast, the MFCEO Project, probably 2 years ago, if I had to guess, 2-3 years ago. And I got hooked on it pretty quick, and he quickly became probably my favorite podcaster. And he started up the Arete Syndicate, and I was like, oh man, that sounds super cool. But when it first started, it was a super high level, exclusive, mastermind that was way out of range for me at the time. And I was like, I put it on my actual 3-year goal list to be in it. And then when they kind of changed the format and opened things up this year, and it was a lot more accessible, budget wise. I dove right in, and this was actually 5-6 months ago now. So in July I joined, and
Nice.
It's been an awesome experience. Met a lot of awesome people so far.
Yeah, same here. It's been awesome. I got to connect with you through the group, and I've connected with so many great people. Corey Barrier, who's got a podcast as well. Just some incredible people that are in this group. What was other than Andy Frisella, what was the kind of the core driver behind why you wanted to be in Arete?
So I'm a big believer in surrounding yourself with like-minded people or people who are going to push you to where you want to go, right? And being, somewhat of a, solopreneur for a while, it gets lonely, Most of my friends and stuff back home, my family, none of them are really, they kind of work traditional jobs for the most part. And so it's always refreshing when you can connect with people who kind of get it and are on that same wavelength. So I knew that, based on Andy and Ed, that it was going to be full of really high quality people and go-getters and people that are going to, naturally push me. So that was probably the biggest reason was, obviously the kind of exclusive calls from Andy and Ed are full of value, and those are probably worth the price alone. But the value you get from surrounding yourself with a bunch of other kind of badass entrepreneur type people, was right. a huge thing for me.
So getting into proximity with other like-minded, hungry, entrepreneurial people was really the kind of the core, decision maker behind that.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you're only as strong as your tribe, right?
That's a fact. Yeah. And so you've been in the online world for how long?
Probably about 3 years now.
Okay. And what kind of triggered that for you?
It's interesting. I don't know if I could point to any one thing necessarily. Mm-hmm. I went to school for strength and conditioning back in Connecticut, and as soon as I got out of there, I got into the fitness industry. I coached CrossFit classes, and I did personal training for about 5 years. And the thing is, it never really developed into a full-time gig. The gym that I was at was awesome, but they had zero turnover. So I started out part-time, and when I left 5 years later, I was still the newest person on staff out of 12 people, which was pretty crazy. So naturally, I kind of was looking around for other things to supplement my income, or I had some extra time. And I don't know exactly where it started. I think my dad had me read Rich Dad Poor Dad years ago, and that kind of got me like a lot of people, right? And that kind of got me thinking along the lines of investing, and which led me to owning a business and that whole world. So I guess I took a really indirect route into that, and I think I realized like a long time ago I was never going to work a traditional 9-to-5 like desk job. I just knew that was like, I didn't like, growing up I had no idea what I wanted to do, or 90% of it, like until in college. But I knew that I didn't want to work a traditional. I said I'm not going to sit at a desk all day. Which is funny because now I sit at a desk a lot more than I'd like to admit. But
never say never, right?
Yeah, right.
How that saying goes.
But at least it's it's kind of on my terms, right? Versus punching in and punching out.
That's right.
So, so I was looking. I tried network marketing a little bit. Like many people do as they're trying to figure things out.
Yep.
And which taught some great sales skills and that sort of thing. But I also did real estate for a little bit. But I wanted to be so I did that for a couple of years, and it was okay. But I wanted to be more location independent. And obviously, if you're going to settle down with real estate, you're in one spot forever. So I knew I kind of had to shift out of that. So I knew it had to be something online, and I kind of realized I wanted to do something myself. So like a lot of other people who start out, I took some social media online courses and went out and launched my social media, agency, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people do. Which
Yep.
is a good and bad thing. It's great as like an entry point.
That's right.
But also the barrier to entry being low means there's a lot of, low quality people in it. There's a lot of bro marketing. And I got into it probably a little, I guess you can't really get into it too soon, but I'd say I kind of jumped in without any real background. I'd never worked in a real business. I'd never been around entrepreneurs. I didn't have any capital to start. So I really just like jumped off into the deep end, which, really forced me to learn. But at the same time, if I had to do it over again, I probably would have prepared a little bit more. I kind of had a fallback.
Yeah.
Because, starting out, you always have like overly optimistic expectations. I was like, I know all these business owners from the gym, and they're all gonna sign me and pay me and all this stuff, and it doesn't quite work that way. I didn't have any sort of systems. I didn't really have a track record to fall back on and that sort of thing. So it was really kind of a shot to the gut, but I like to think it was all a big learning experience, right?
Well, yeah, and if you think about it, I mean, what the pattern is that people hopefully will notice that are listening to this is that you are constantly taking action. That's the biggest thing, is you are from taking action in the fitness thing to taking action in the social media agency and just jumping in. You made that leap. And a lot of people will just sit there and stare into the water and overthink it, and you didn't do that, which that optimism, or that blind optimism like I had, I jumped into the printing world and doing graphic design and printing without any business experience either, other than being in the car business and home loans and in the sales industry really. And I took that experience and I used that for my own business, but I had no idea what it was like to know all the pillars of business and know all the pitfalls. So yeah, you make a lot of mistakes in the beginning of your journey, but I mean, those are the most valuable lessons that you can possibly learn that you can't learn in college. They don't teach you that kind of stuff in college. Right. So it's stuff that you have to learn the hard way. And what I like about what you've said so far is your dad planted that seed for the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And finally, when it came time for you to try to diversify your revenue and your income, you jumped in, and I'm sure that Rich Dad Poor Dad was a part of giving you that confidence. If you had never done any kind of personal development or read any kind of personal growth books, you may have approached that thing even with more caution, which may have, you have not moved forward. So I think it's really cool that he gave you that book that says a lot about him and his belief for you in the future. And I think that's something that we need to pass on. I'm passing it on to my kids, and hopefully my kids will pass that on to theirs. And that thirst and that hunger for knowledge is just super, super important.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because, if you hear that he gave me that book, you think, oh, he's probably, an entrepreneur or something like that. But my dad is about the most classic, like, go to school, get a job, career, and don't take any risks type guy.
Traditionalist or fundamentalist.
Yeah, 100%. So it's funny because he gave me that book because he first finally read it in like his 50s.
Wow.
And he was like, this is interesting. Like, maybe you should check this out. So it's funny because he's the exact opposite of an entrepreneur in many ways. He works real hard, smart guy, got a PhD,
wow,
and all that. But like, he's never gonna be the person to start his own thing, kind of like I do. So it's interesting how we're so different in that way. A lot of people like, Andy talks about how his dad was an entrepreneur, and so he saw that growing up and was like, got that background. And like, I honestly, this sounds kind of crazy, but I didn't know what the word entrepreneur meant until I was about to graduate college. Wow. I didn't know a single business owner growing up. I didn't really understand what that even meant. So I was like, I started about as far back knowledge-wise as you possibly can.
Wow.
My dad actually, when I was going into college, he was like, you should, maybe you should major in business, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, business, like, what's that? I don't even know what that means. Like, he didn't actually like explain any of it to me, which, isn't really his fault, because he had, that was his background. Him and my mom come from like massive families, Midwest Catholic families. He's one of 9, she's one of 17. And
what?
So they grew up with nothing. So their mindset is, go get like a stable job and that sort of thing.
Yep.
Which is interesting. So I get all into kind of how that upbringing kind of actually, in a lot of ways, caused me to question things and go the other way.
That's powerful right there.
What'd you say?
That's very powerful. The fact that you kind of broke the mold is what it sounds like to me. And I come from what you talked about. I mean, my grandfather was an entrepreneur, went from the military for 28 years, retired, opened up his own video production business. Then my dad took it over. Then my dad had multiple businesses over the years, and that I kind of just followed suit, because I just knew from a young age. I mean, I was playing business as a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, drawing pictures and trading for money, and that's just always who I was. So I find it so fascinating to meet somebody and get to chat with somebody who had the complete opposite experience, where their whole family and their surroundings and their proximity and everything was the opposite of entrepreneurship. And for you to now look back at whatever, I mean, how old are you now?
29.
At 29 years old, not even 30 years old, to be able to look back and you're an entrepreneur, and that's so cool to me.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So I guess to make that make sense, so my parents, my mom especially, was like very strict, hardcore, like, you never miss church. Like, she actually, I was homeschooled through 7th grade because me and my sisters, because she didn't, want me out in the, evil public schools, right? So, she had a lot of rules, especially I was the oldest of 4. So obviously the oldest kind of has like the most, it's always the strictest, right?
Yep.
And so because of all these things, I started to like, I always questioned. I was like, well, why is this way? Why do you say that? And, a lot of times your answer is, because I said so, which drove me, up the wall. But that caused me to just naturally question things. So question conventional wisdom. Like, if something was told to me, I'd be like, well, why? What's the reasoning behind that? So having all of that those kind of strict rules that made me feel kind of like held back in some ways caused me to obviously, when you meet resistance, you kind of push against it, right?
This is so great. This is so great, because John DeMartini literally talks exactly about what you're talking about, is your voids become your values. And because she was holding back information that you were hungry for, it created a value system inside of you that made you curious and made you want the answers. That's so powerful, dude.
Right. Yeah. I never really accepted that, like, okay, this is the rule just because this is the rule, So that naturally caused me to become someone who was like curious and kind of questioned and looked like outside the box.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is what eventually led me to where I am today.
So tell me about like the social media marketing agency that you did to what you're doing today, even with the Shopify stuff, and now actually adding in the chat stuff that we'll talk a little bit more about. But kind of talk about that journey. When did the social media marketing agency start?
So I officially got my LLC and did, launched, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And actually probably about 3 years ago, almost exactly, November 2017. And I think I got my first client spring of 2018 and got a few clients, started to get a little momentum early on.
Yeah.
And then I think 2 out of the 3 of them, kind of back-to-back months, shut it down. What I was doing, didn't offer a lot of explanation, but at that point I didn't have kind of the mental resilience that you build over time that I have now.
Yeah.
And so I took those really, really hard, so it caused me to fully lose belief in what I was doing. I was am I actually good at this? And because of that, for a long time, I didn't really reach out and promote myself or go get more clients, because I was just really doubting what I was doing because of that. Whereas today, I lost a client a couple weeks ago that's been with me for 2 years, and they're a local business, and COVID has hit them really, really hard. So, which affected a lot of my kind of recurring monthly floor.
Yeah.
And I was able to bounce back in a day and be okay, this, I kind of found the good in it, and I'm this allows me to focus on other things. But 3 years ago when I was starting, that was a huge mental blow.
Oh yeah. What would you what advice would you give yourself to that person 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, however long ago? What would you say to yourself now when you had that happen to you?
Just that it's it's part of the game, that that happens, especially starting out. You can't expect to be good when you're starting something. Everyone has to start in the beginning as you're not going to be an expert, you're not going to bat 1,000. So probably just that. I didn't really have a mentor at all. I was kind of just I was reading some books here and there and stuff like that, and taking some online courses, but I didn't have anyone with real experience to kind of bounce anything off of, or kind of tell me what to expect mentally, which I think is the biggest part of the picture, right? People want tactics and strategies and stuff, but entrepreneurship, man, it's 80% mindset. So
yeah. So do you have a mentor now?
I would say I have a lot of people in my circle. I don't have a Mr. Miyagi direct mentor,
Okay. No coaches or anything like that. Just the
not
proximity.
Right now. I definitely plan on it eventually, but just based on where things are at right now, that one-on-one coaching cost is a little bit prohibitive, even though I fully believe in it.
Yeah.
Right now, I have Arte, I have all these awesome people. I kind of look at Andy and Ed as mentors in a lot of ways.
They are. They absolutely are.
Yep. I have another little mastermind that I'm in.
Good.
From another kind of online forum, which we're all kind of at the same level, and we do group calls every couple of weeks and that sort of thing. So that's I have a lot of people now that I can bounce things off of, or that I talk to regularly, who are kind of in the same boat or a little bit ahead of me.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I have that one mentor, but I have kind of a community of people.
Got it.
That I can rely on. So
that's good. You got a network now that you didn't have back then. That's really powerful.
Yeah. Always trying to meet people whenever I can. But anyways, I guess going back to that, I lost just a couple clients for a long time. I was kind of just directionless. I was is this really what I want to do? Because I also made the mistake that a lot of people make starting out, is I tried to offer everything, anything and everything. People were oh, what do you do in online marketing? I'm I do, social media, I run paid ads, I do Google, I do SEO. I didn't know anything about SEO really. I'll build websites. I kind of was oh, I can do everything. And when you, as no one person can really do those things all well unless they've been in it for a long time.
That's a huge piece of advice right there. Is jack of all trades, master of none. and you want to be able to master your area.
Yeah, that's probably the other piece of advice I would have given myself back then is to, you know, everyone was saying niche down, but I was like, nah, I don't need to do that, you know, because like the people I knew and I had personal relationships with, which at that point was a lot of people that were at the gym that I worked at.
Yeah.
Had a variety of different businesses. So I'm like, oh, I'm not going to niche down because I don't want to like, you know, cut these people out. But then I never really got that far because, you know, it wasn't focused. So
that's right.
I kind of, you know, treaded water for a long time, and I discovered chatbots just along the way, almost by accident. You know, I was doing some Facebook ads, and I came across, I can't remember exactly where I first saw it, but I came across, you know, people, some of these marketers using chatbots like in Facebook. And like when I first saw it and interacted with it, I was like, whoa, like this is totally different. And all these different use cases started popping into my head. I'm like, this is the next big thing. Yeah. Just like social media is, you know, that huge thing. I think I got into the social media wave just a little bit late. At that point, kind of everyone was doing it. There's, you know, all the Tai Lopez's of the world, and we're jumping in at the same time. Yeah. So for a while, I was kind of not directionless, but I wasn't real focused. I was still offering, like, I was still saying, oh, I'll do, you know, social media and stuff like that, and also saying, oh, I do chatbots too. So I never really like got far with either of them because I was like kind of like I had one foot in each space. So probably about a year ago, I was like, all right, I think it's time for me to kind of really shift over to chatbots and chat marketing, because I see, you know, that's where things are headed, and I feel like I can provide more value there versus, you know, being in the super crowded social media space. Which is all still tied together. Definitely, like, you know, Messenger and Facebook are obviously part of social media, but but I was like, you know, with the chatbots, I can really do something different and new, and that is a more probably scarce skill at this point. So that's when I kind of decided to switch over to that. But then I also made the same mistake again where I didn't really niche down. I was like, you know, I'll build a chatbot for your business and this business and that business. And, that's right. And that's not really scalable, and it's not really, it's just not really the way to go. So finally, after a while, I realized, okay, I need to kind of pick a lane. And that's where
the e-com.
I decided on, e-commerce, particularly Shopify. It can work for other platforms like WooCommerce and, you know, BigCom, whatever it might be, really well. But the fact that it integrates directly ManyChat and Shopify makes it much easier for people to implement. So, like I was talking to you earlier a little bit about, I guess, off camera. So now what I decided was I like working with, actually before I got into Shopify, I actually did try a different niche, which was high-end, like, apartment communities. So living in Scottsdale, like the Phoenix area, there's all these, you know, high-end apartments going up everywhere. And when we moved out here about a year and a half, 2 years ago from the East Coast, we had to find an apartment before we got here. So, like, we couldn't do a tour or anything. So I'm, like, calling all these different apartments, and man, the whole process was just like a mess. You know, my fiance was like, I'm not calling them, like, you call them, I'm not getting on the phone. So I'm calling all these people or all these apartment communities, like, just looking for basic answers. Like, they don't put a lot of their stuff on their website because they want you to call and ask, right? And so I'm calling, and it's like, as soon as you have one little question, they're like, okay, well, what's your email address? What's your phone number in case we get disconnected? And then you end up on the phone for like 20, 30 minutes, like, each one. And it's just like a time suck, and it's frustrating and that sort of thing. And they're all trying to get you to come in a tour. So based on that experience, and then what, like, I knew chatbots could do, I was like, oh, I'm going to build chatbots for the high-end apartment community. It's such a natural fit. And so I actually spent a lot of time and energy building out like a framework for that industry and joining the multi-housing association and starting a network and stuff like that. But, I guess another learning lesson was that these companies are like, and I was like, well, part of me too was like, oh, like they'll have no problem affording this as long as they see the value, right? Because these are like big companies we're talking about. But then that also makes it super, super hard to get in touch with the decision makers. So I had a lot of trouble getting in touch with the decision makers. And then once I did, they were like, oh, well, this like doesn't integrate with like our proprietary CRMs and stuff that we use. And they were already like contracted with these other like huge marketing companies and stuff like that. So I still believe there's a huge need there for like what I'm doing. But, and I was starting to see these chatbots pop up more and more.
You just showed up early to the party is all.
Exactly. So I was starting to see these chatbots like pop up, but they're so like primitive and like more annoying than anything.
Yeah.
But people would be like, oh, I already have a chatbot or whatever. And I'm like, well, that might be hurting more than it's helping you. But anyway, so I spent a lot of time on that. And then COVID hit and that industry just like shut everything down, right? People stopped paying rent. They started cutting budgets. So I was like, okay, I think that's a sign that I'm supposed to kind of pivot again here. Which was frustrating, but also, again, I learned a lot from it. So that brought me finally to kind of figuring out, okay, what am I not going to be? Well, I realized too, I didn't like trying to work with these major companies. I was like, I really resonate and I want to work with and help with like the small guy, right?
That's a good aha moment.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me. I was like, well, instead of going out and doing like this enterprise type selling and prospecting, like I really don't like that. And I really don't feel like it's making like an impact in people's lives, where I was like, if I can go and find this small business owner and connect with them one-on-one and like help them, that's like actually going to be like, somewhat fulfilling for me. Right. And make a bigger difference for them versus just being like a pure, like transaction. So I'm trying to take, I guess, what's you could consider like a B2B concept and try and make it like B2C, where I'm like connecting with people. And, I decided instead of going like pounding the pavement and sending out cold emails, I'm like, I want to build relationships through social media and through connections and build an audience and like kind of do it that way.
Smart.
On a more personal level. So that's brought me to where I'm at, and then it's still new, but I like where it's headed. So.
Well, that's exciting. I've noticed that you had a couple pivots, obviously in your business and pivoting towards clarity. And I've had to do the same thing. I mean, I was all over the place, every industry, from carpet cleaning to smogs to attorneys to contractors. I mean, you name it, car dealerships. It didn't matter who it was. I was helping them. And the more I've gotten focused, it's removed the learning curves and has really helped me streamline and create more of a predictable and higher profit margins, but more of a predictable income, which is really, really huge. Once you got a campaign that's working well, all you do is copy it, change the information, and replicate it for the next person. And so that saved a lot of time, made a lot more money, and just made a lot more sense. So the pivoting towards, what it is that you truly want to do and being able to understand the small business owner versus the big enterprises. The sales cycles are really long with those. They have bigger budgets, but when times get tough, they typically are the first ones to cut things. So I think that was smart that you saw that, and that was one of your your values as well, as helping out the small guy, because that's where you've been. That's you had to start from nothing. So that's really neat. What I'm curious about, and I think the people here are probably curious about as we're talking about chatbots, is give me some tangible things. Like, what are the 3 things, are the misconceptions or the mistakes, misconceptions and mistakes that people use with chatbots?
I would say the biggest one, so it kind of depends on the use case, right? So like, if it's, sometimes you'll see chatbots, everyone's probably at this point come across some sort of chatbot on a website. A lot of times, if you see it on like a major, like massive, say Fortune 500 company, or like a software company, that's going to be like 100% pretty much customer support. And that's what that's for. But on another level, when we're talking about like local businesses, let's say small to medium size, who use Facebook and Facebook ads and there's more of like that kind of personal connection with their customers and stuff like that. Then, chatbots, and it's funny because I've been saying chatbots for a long time, and people, I think like the image that comes to mind is like the super robotic, like, automated thing that people are like, oh man, I've come across one or two of those that just drive me nuts. And so I've changed my verbiage to not so much chatbots, but the chat marketing, which is more encompassing. So, which also naturally shifted my approach to it, right?
I like that.
Because people what they really want is more sales, right? It's nice to save time on customer support and stuff, but when you're a smaller business, you care more about growing sales than you do about, you tend to have more time than money. So you want more sales, and, the customer support's kind of a nice bonus.
Interesting.
So that's the biggest thing, is that chat marketing is actually more about marketing than about support. So we're talking about building lists, engaging with customers in an interactive way, and gathering more data, and a whole host of things, marketing related. And then there's kind of the support is kind of a bonus on the back end. So it's getting people, my challenge right now is getting people to, when they hear chat or chatbot, they think of again, this kind of boring autoresponder,
cold automated email type. Yeah,
exactly. Okay. Yeah, that just spits back the same response over and over or something like that. But it's getting people to understand no, this is probably the most powerful marketing tool out there if you use it right. It's if you could turn your website and all the information, turn it into an interactive experience, or almost having your own app. You can get these things to do almost whatever you want. You're automating, you're doing really intelligent condition-based situational marketing, where you can't really do that through email or text or a landing page, right? People want back and forth. As humans, we're made to interact. So even if it's not interacting directly with a real person all the time, it still feels more natural than just constant one way, in your face marketing, which is what we see so much all day, when we look at regular websites and stuff like that. It's all
what I'm hearing you say is, one, the customization and personalization of those chatbots, and two, being able to use them for things that are other than customer service and actually use them as revenue generators. Yep,
100%. Part of it is it's actually fun, and people. That's why I think it doesn't resonate as much with big corporate, buttoned up cultures. But if you're that small business and you're trying to connect with your people, you can really make it fun and light and infuse your personality into some of that automation, and insert fun gifts and get people to laugh, and do interactive quizzes, and make it, so I don't know if I should say it on here because someone might steal it, but I want to, maybe make some t-shirts that say make marketing fun again. Right?
There we go. That's a good slogan.
Or along those lines, and people kind of have fun with it. Because a lot of people, I'm hey, can you check this out, provide feedback, or you check out this demo, and they're oh, I guess, whatever, send it to me. They don't really want to, and then they go through it and they're oh man, that was a totally different experience than what I expected. They laughed, they
hey, true story. I landed my wife on a chat. So I'm dead serious. I got my wife because of a back and forth chat that her and I, she sent me a friend request. I'd known her for almost 15 years at that point. We met when we were kids. She threw a house party. And then she sent me a friend request, and I immediately popped on Messenger and said, "Hey, what up, stranger? Hope you're doing well." And she sent me one back, and then next thing you know, I sent a GIF, and then she sent a GIF is the right term. I sent a GIF, and she sent a GIF, and then I sent a GIF, and then we went back and forth, and these GIF wars started. And I got her to laugh, and she's like, "Okay, you win." And I'm all right. And then she'd do a whole bunch of it, and then I'd laugh. I'm all right, you won this round. And that was kind of how the conversation started. So I know personally, my wife today came because of a chat conversation.
That's actually really funny because I kind of had the same thing. So I was working at the gym. My fiance joins the gym, but we didn't really like talk or anything. And then later, I think maybe I added her on Facebook or I don't really remember, but.
Come on, it's okay. You were stalking. It's all right.
But I sent her a message and on Messenger, and we started talking back and forth. This was 5 years ago, and then we ended up hanging out from there.
Wow.
So it's kind of funny that was like our first conversation as well.
Chat is the medium. I bet you there's going to be a lot of people in here. In fact, anybody that's watching this, if you had a conversation or a relationship that was sparked through chat, drop that in here. I want to hear your stories. That'd be super cool. Drop a comment in the YouTube or even in the podcast. I'm sure there's some ways that we can do comments, but I want to hear some stories because chat is huge, and the fact that you're building your business around it is really neat. And I would use that story, by the way. I think that's really powerful.
Right? When you think about like all this talk about sliding into DMs, right? It's kind of
sliding into exactly. Yeah. It works, and using it for business that's got to be super powerful.
Yeah, especially because that's how the younger generation like communicates today. Like you can't get anyone like millennial or younger to pick up the phone. Like people do not like talking on the phone, especially if it's a number they don't recognize.
Yeah.
But like they'll text, they'll chat, they'll do that. So that's like, it's a great way, especially if you have like a younger demographic, to really kind of meet them on their level, how they want to communicate.
For sure. And what's interesting is I'm actually writing a book right now, a marketing book that's going to be game changing. And one of my upcoming topics I'm going to talk about is chat. And it's not an area that I have a ridiculous amount of experience in, but I'm including it in my book because I know it's such an important feature of social media and just connecting with people. And that's what my book is really kind of focused around, is relationship marketing. And that's kind of the unique angle that I'm taking, is I'm covering relationship marketing, the spokes of the digital marketing wheel, and then actually how the strategy and science behind marketing. So those are the three fundamentals that I'm going to be teaching in my book, and chat is going to be one of those. But I'm just finished up the email marketing section, and of course right into the email marketing section, I'm already talking about chat coming in future chapters. So I know there's going to be a huge rise in chat. I think you're very smart for moving into that direction, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show with you and talk to you a little bit more about that. And then obviously utilizing it for e-commerce. My wife's got a really successful e-commerce business, and we have the messenger chat thing on there, and we're having a hard time because it's just like a plugin, some random plugin through Weebly, that we can't even see how many conversations and sales have actually initiated from those chat that's on the corner of her website when people are on mobile or desktop. So I was curious, aside from the many other mistakes I'm sure that are out there with chat, people not using it, for sales, and they're not customizing and personalizing the messages and just being super generic, what's another mistake that you would see that you could recommend, maybe give some good advice on?
Yeah, so one of those is kind of what you mentioned. So you have this plugin, and there's a million different like kind of live chat plugins out there. And I think there's some that are, good for certain use situations. Like, you really don't want an automated chatbot if you have like a very technical kind of business. Like, most of the time you're going to want like a live chat, which you can actually do. So like, I should say, with chatbots and chat marketing, it's never meant to replace humans, which is like the people's biggest fear. They're like, oh, well, like, I don't want, this automated thing doing all of my customer support.
That's right.
And with a properly designed kind of chat marketing interface, you have what's called the bot to human handoff. So you have the chatbot that can kind of answer, kind of like your website, can answer some of those like really common questions,
frequently asked
and like
questions,
kind of first steps. But then it should eventually, if it's needed, hand off to a person in the right situation. So it's not meant to replace humans. It's actually meant to facilitate more conversations with people. So that's probably like one of the biggest misconceptions out there.
It's a human enhancement, not a replacement.
Exactly. So that's what I've been saying is like enhanced customer support, not like better, faster. Because people, at the end of the day, it's still like about making those connections directly with the customer. But
my mind is spinning because I'm thinking of so many ways now that I could be using chat even in my business, from generating more reviews to nurturing. I mean, sales is nurturing as well. And so nurturing existing relationships through chat. There's a guy, Tanner Chittister, who's a well-known Facebook. He spends a ton of money on Facebook ads, and he uses chat in his business and throughout his funnel and stuff. I think he's got one of those ClickFunnels awards, but he's really well-known in the community. I've talked back and forth with him on his personal profile, but on his business profile, on his page that he has under his name, his self-titled name, I get messages from that probably at least once every couple of weeks of some sort of nurturing message. Hey, you should check this out. Hey, have you heard about this? So he's re-engaging me with that chat, and I think that's a really powerful feature.
Yeah, it's really cool, especially when you're talking about like running ads into it and driving traffic into it. It's cool because like marketers know you need touch points to convert, right?
Yep.
The faster you can get those touch points, the better. So with an email, you might get someone onto your list, and then you send them an email sequence, let's say for like a week, to get like 7 touch points, or you try and maybe like show them an ad again or something.
Yeah.
But like with Messenger, if you can get them into that kind of flow, you can move the sales process along like in real time, like instantly back and forth. So you can speed up the sales process like significantly versus a lot of these other mediums, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So it lets people kind of pick their own journey, right? Pick their own pace.
Wow.
As they're interacting.
Now, so is it something that you kind of just set and forget? Like you build it out and you set it up and then you just kind of leave it and let it do its thing, or is it something that's always evolving?
I would say the answer, like most things, is that it depends. So some businesses that maybe want it more for a support or kind of have like a very simple offer, you're always going to need a little bit of maintenance and changing it, but like some can be, for the most part, set it and forget it, and other ones, who are constantly coming out, let's say with new content or new sales, is going to require regular maintenance and upkeep.
Yeah.
So it really kind of depends on the business and the use case. But the one other tip I'd like to kind of throw in there is that if you're not like this, like I said, enterprise level business or software business where you need all live chat, if you're going to do anything like automated or even live chat on a small business level, like you want to use Messenger compared to like any other messaging platform. And here's the crazy powerful part about it, is that most people don't know, is that as soon as someone interacts with your chatbot, like through ManyChat, they're technically, if they're logged into Facebook or Messenger, which they almost always are, then Facebook automatically can pull some basic info from their Facebook profile. So you have like their picture, you have their name, you don't have to ask for their name. You have like their location and a couple other like basic facts. You have their, Facebook ID for like retargeting.
Wow.
And you are able to do this without having to like ask them in like this form with all these fields. And then you can also, like, you want to get people to opt into, say, SMS or email. You say, hey, is this the best number to reach you at? And you can pull the number from their Facebook profile. So they just have to tap. So it's like one tap opt-ins, which, as like lowers resistance, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's also personalized, right? Yeah, so because it's through Facebook and it knows their name, you can insert these fields into your flows. So like when it says, oh, hey, Adrian, like, so it's personalized. So people feel like it's talking to them. Yeah. Which is, people talk about personalized email,
all day long. I do the same thing within my LinkedIn automation. That's really cool. That's powerful. Yeah. So I guess my next question is, whether I was going to implement this thing more into my business, or there's somebody here that's watching this wants to implement this into their business. What are the next steps that you typically take in terms of evaluating and deciding whether somebody's a good fit for you?
In terms of like an agency or someone to build it out, you're saying?
Just a business, for a business that wants to get started and do something potentially with a chatbot to improve their customer service or whatever that looks like. What does that typically look like on your side? What's the process?
So it actually starts with getting really clear on your sales process, and what you want to accomplish. So it tends to be actually a really useful exercise for the business owner, because a lot of business owners, I mean, if it's like a decent sized business, they tend to have a pretty good handle, but like someone who's kind of a smaller operation and they're just kind of getting their marketing rolling and stuff like that, they tend to not know exactly like how things should go, which you have to know because you're building out like an exact conversation with options along the way. You know what I mean? So you have to know exactly like, here's point A and here's point B, and here's exactly how we're trying to take that person there. So it's really an exercise in like clarifying your thinking.
Okay.
And that's always step one. Because if I go in and they're just like, oh yeah, we want like a bot, I'm like, okay, well, what exactly do you want it to do? What is your process? What's the language need to be like? That sort of thing. So that
makes sense.
I know that's not really like the technical tactics answer that people want, but like that's the first step usually. And that depends. You know, some businesses that's a little bit more intricate than others, obviously. But that's kind of the first step.
Okay.
And then, so figuring out how it fits into your game plan, what you got going on currently. And then, man, I mean, you can go and you can try and learn it on your own. The cool thing is like people think it's super techy and that like I code all this stuff. And I don't know how to code anything, actually. So like I said, chatbots, chat marketing, it's actually far more about copywriting, sales and psychology and understanding marketing than it is about like the technical side.
Got it.
So it can still get very complex on the back end, but it doesn't actually require like you to know how to be a developer.
Interesting.
Which is cool. So it's really accessible to anyone if they're willing to kind of put in the time and energy, which you can do. I mean, I've spent like the last year or two, I've gone through like, lots of the very high end like courses. I've been to, the biggest conferences related to this and stuff. So, I mean, to get to like an expert level, you're looking at like 6 months to a year of like constant learning, right? Well, so it depends how much you really want to cut down the learning curve.
Yeah, and delegating is, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for that. We said it at the very beginning of this. You can't be a jack of all trades and then a master of none, right? Now, not in these times that we're living in. You got to specialize in something. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from our interview. And what we've done so far is we've identified, okay, what are the challenges and mistakes that people have towards chatbots and chat marketing in general? What does the process look like in kind of getting those things types started? And I think the third one that I want to cover that is really, really important for everybody that's watching this is one of the wins or a couple of the wins, at least one win of something that you've had that can give some people some context of why this is just so valuable and so important for a business, something that you've done over the last year, 2 years, however long you've been doing this. Give us a story of something that you've used chatbots for and have had a huge success with.
So one that's, I guess, just really simple to understand is I made one for a local business that I was working with for a long time. And I also built them a new website and stuff to kind of go with it. And when we looked at how many people were sending emails with questions, because it was a ski and bike and kayak shop, like high-end kind of stuff. So a lot of times people have specific questions on equipment and how it's going to work for them and stuff. And, or, do you have this in stock and that sort of thing. So compared to sending emails and calling the store, like they got dozens times more people interacting through the chat and trying to find answers through the chat than sending an email to the store. So like right away we saw this massive uptick in like inquiries and people like, instead of not finding their answer and going to another site, they reach out and kind of are able to find what they're looking for. So that was pretty interesting, just to kind of prove that like this is how people want to communicate right now. So that was pretty interesting. Another one was ManyChat has what's called a comment growth tool, where people can on your Facebook page, if they comment like a certain keyword, it can automatically kind of like jump into a messenger flow that kind of takes them to either gives them an answer or gives them like, they comment like, oh, I want this, it can jump into a conversation and deliver it to them. So you can build your list very fast that way.
Wow.
But we did like a giveaway with that where it was like, we did a video and kind of, here's how you enter, comment your favorite like ski resort below, and people commented, and like obviously that boosted the Facebook, the algorithm.
Yep.
So it got crazy like reach,
Organic.
And then they're also instantly going into this conversation, and we're taking them along the path. And I think it was something. I think we got like 300 or 400 leads or like entries with like Messenger, SMS, and email. Like almost all of them opted into all three for like $100.
Wow. And that's organic?
Yeah. No, so we put like $100 into it.
Okay.
Like
nice.
To boost it, but we got it going like organically first. And boosted it. So that's also
incredible.
Yeah, so that's not something you can do all the time necessarily, because that was like a contest. You can't just run contests like every week. Yeah. But that's kind of like a pretty cool example, especially like get people going and build your list like in the beginning.
Yeah, that's neat. I didn't even know that existed, that you could put out an offer. So I could say, hey, I'm getting ready to release my beta or my pre-launch of my book. If you want to get your free copy, go ahead and drop in I'm in below. And so then everybody that actually comments on I'm in just automatically gets thrown into a chat with me, or not with me, but with the chatbot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you just want to be careful that you kind of like set people's expectations, right? So you don't you want to be like, drop a comment below and we'll, shoot you a message and get you.
We'll get you a link to get your free copy.
Mm-hmm.
That's neat. How neat.
Yeah.
See, that's a really powerful, that adds some context. That could save me a ton of time with my book coming and softwares that I have and different things that I'm running. So I'm definitely going to implement that. So we'll have to talk after the show about that. What are some ways that if somebody wants to explore chat marketing and incorporating this into their business, what's the best way to get a hold of you and reach out and kind of connect with you?
You can either, find me through email, which is bradley@breakthroughdigital.net, or, feel free to reach out on Facebook or Instagram. My name is Bradley Roth. I think on Instagram it's Bradley_Roth.
Easy.
I'm on there pretty regularly, so it's an easy way to get in touch.
Perfect. And then, I'm sure you normally probably charge for consulting and, that kind of stuff. What kind of deal, if somebody wants to reach out and talk about chat, will you give them a little bit of time to talk about it, or?
Page guide that kind of gets you really up to speed on how it can fit into what you're doing and kind of answer a lot of those like initial questions that people have.
Beautiful.
And kind of talk about the benefits and stuff. So.
Got it. So that was breakthroughdigital.net. That's your website?
Yep.
Okay, so Bradley at breakthroughdigital.net. If you guys need help, you want to get chat marketing, this is the guy I'm going to be leaning on. This is the guy you should be leaning on and asking questions to and working with. I love to support fellow Arte brothers and sisters, and it's being in proximity with like-minded people. That's really the key thing, is that you're going to be dealing with somebody that has integrity. Every person I've found so far in Arte just seems to be at a higher level than anybody I've ever dealt with. So I really want people to walk away from this interview and just really understand that the type of people that you're going to be dealing with when you put yourself in proximity with groups like Arte Syndicate and my other group, Billion Dollar Brotherhood, like you're working with people who are hungry, who want to make an impact in the world. And you're not just doing this to line your pockets. You're doing this because you want to go out there and help entrepreneurs and small business owners like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. You can't really go wrong in arts. And every single person I've met is just super high caliber people.
Solid. Well, that's a big endorsement for Arte Syndicate. It's a big endorsement for you. And I'm just grateful that we had the time to get to know each other a little bit better and talk about what you're doing. And hopefully we can set some time for you and I to get to know each other even more on what I'm doing and just find ways to collaborate. I think 2021 is going to be a huge year. I said this on social, I think yesterday or the day before, but I'm going to make an effort to make 2021 my biggest collaborative year with as many people as I possibly can that are at your level and higher, that are really trying to go out there and make a big impact. And I have no interest in doing chat myself. It's not an area that I've ever explored or even touched, and you're the expert in that, and I'm going to lean on the experts to help me leverage every tool that I possibly can out there to help me grow my business, especially right now. So thank you very much.
No, 100%. That's the fastest way to get there, right? Is borrowing other people's expertise. So
That's right. Well, thank you
But
so
yeah,
much, Bradley.
This was a blast. I had a great time.
It was great.
I appreciate you having me on.
Of course, yeah, we'll do it again. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button. And if you love this episode, hit the like button here on YouTube. We got great content coming all the time. We got 3 videos a week, every single week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So we want to be sure to get the notifications and updates when those are happening. And we got great content like this. So thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. And as always, keep looking up.